Hey guys! Today we're going to be making something that in my mind is an absolute summer essential, which is strawberries. I have had a couple of requests for making these, but I've had even more requests for things that include strawberries or would look good with strawberries. So in order to make those, I need the strawberry tutorial first, so I really hope you'll enjoy. To make the strawberry cane, you're going to need 3 colors, which is red, white and translucent. And to keep the red looking very warm rather than too pink when mixing the different shades, I mixed in some orange. You want all the shades to have somewhat of a translucent appearance, and if you're not too comfortable with color mixing, I do recommend making a small test piece and baking that. I first wrote out a log shape, which is shade number 4 mixed with a tiny bit of shade number 3, and I then wrapped this in a sheet of shade number 5. Next, I pressed the needle tool against one of the sides and used my fingers to pinch the opposite side, which is going to give sort of like a heart shape. I then wrapped the white mixture around this. And I then started wrapping it in the other shades, going towards the darkest color. Once you have that, you want to cut it in half, and then next we're going to be placing the lines on the inside. So to do this, I just use my blade to cut it into different sections, one at a time, and then place a thin strip of white in between. Personally, I made sure that my white was pretty translucent, so the lines are barely noticeable on the actual finished strawberry slices, though you are still able to see them up close. Just like with any other food, strawberries can vary in appearance a lot, and so the inside can sometimes be very bright red, sometimes more faded, sometimes darker, sometimes the lines are almost a reddish tone, and other times they're very bright opaque white. For miniature strawberries, I personally prefer the softer look, so I make sure that the inside isn't too dark. And I also find that very opaque, harsh white lines is going to make it look more cartoony. Once you've done that to both halves, you just want to put it back together, and then next we're going to be reducing the size of the cane. Since this cane isn't round, you can't really roll it, so instead you're going to slowly start pressing all sides. Depending on the size of the cane, it might seem like you're going nowhere at first, but after a while you should be able to start pulling it. And even though my cane was pretty small, I ended up with a lot more small canes than what I needed. Once you're done with the cane, you can cut some slices and begin adding texture. For this, I first used the needle tool to mark off some of the lines. I then went over it with a toothbrush, which is going to soften those lines and give texture to the rest of the strawberry. And then finally I went in with the needle tool again and used this to texture the center portion. As always, if you have any questions about the tools and materials I use, or any questions about baking or pre-baking, I do put quite a few links in the info box, which should be pretty useful. And after pre-baking, you should have something like this. For the whole strawberries, you're going to need an off-white creamy kind of color. I placed a small piece on the tip of a needle tool and then used my fingers and a silicone tool to shape it. And then for the texture on the outside, I simply used a needle tool. You want to try to keep the pattern pretty consistent and also keep the dots or pricks. Isn't it called pricks like a pinprick? Otherwise, I'm very sorry if I offended you, but you want to try to keep these pretty small as well, because otherwise it's going to look too exaggerated. Another thing you want to be careful with is making them too deep, because the seeds or the bumpy texture of a strawberry doesn't really go that far into the strawberry. To remove them from the tip of the needle tool, I usually just use a second needle tool on my X-Acto knife and gently push them all the way around at the bottom, or technically the top of the strawberry, and gently slide them off. And to make half a strawberry, I simply added some clay to the back of one of the pre-baked slices and added some texture the same way. The reason why I don't just create half of a strawberry directly from the cane is because it's a lot more difficult to control both the front and back and keeping the texture, whereas when you have one of the sides being pre-baked, it's a lot easier. To paint them, I used 4 colors of acrylic paint, and I figured for these it would be a lot easier to show the exact colors I mixed. So for the seed portion, I mixed this kind of dirty mustardy yellow, which is basically green and yellow with a tiny bit of red. On the strawberry I was looking at for reference, the seeds were pretty light. However, if you use a paint that is too light, either too bright yellow or too light green, it's again just going to look weird and fake. On top of that, I'm going to be using this red paint on its own. And then for the final touches, or for strawberries that are more ripe or just darker, I mix the two reds together. When you add the color for the seeds, it doesn't matter if some of it stains the strawberry itself, because it's yellow, so it's just going to again make the red look more warm and summery. But I did use my finger to wipe off most of it, so it wouldn't have too much of an effect on the red paint. To make the leaves, I take this dark olivey green, rolled out a thin snake, flattened it slightly, and then used my blade to reach the ends or the sides to make the sides look more pointy. I then cut off some thin slices. And then arrange them on my sculpting base before baking. After baking, I glued them onto the strawberries. Then used some green acrylic paint to add a tiny bit of shading. And then finally I added some glass glaze to the strawberries themselves. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed these videos and want to see more, definitely give the video a thumbs up. I'm sure someone else you've seen on YouTube must have mentioned how YouTube is broken at the moment, and it is so true. So your support really means a lot and makes a huge difference. And as always, if you have any food requests, feel free to leave them in the comments.